Welcome back to another edition of the podcast. And today we are reflecting on Oldham Athletics' 3-0 victory away at York City in the National League playoff semi-final. They've completely stunned York. I think most people are shocked by this result, but is it really time now for Oldham Athletic to return back to the Football League? They're currently one game away. Before we get into all of that, Rob, firstly, how are you doing this evening, and how do you kind of analyse that game overall?
Well, first of all, good to see you, Luke. I'm doing very well, thank you. Massive expectation for that game. I think I was really buzzing. I think it was a side who'd got 96 points and had finished the season really well against one that had really started to pick up strong momentum towards, these playoffs or in these playoffs. Obviously, seeing off your own side in the space of 12 minutes, really, in the last game. I didn't have a clear idea who was going to win. I know York, when they can play their game, are very, very good at it. But I did wonder if Oldham might be quite good at stopping them with their experience, with their physicality. And they certainly did. Never in my wildest dreams did I see Oldham going there and winning that game 3-0 tonight. I've got to be honest. So yeah, I didn't actually put out anything anywhere saying who I thought would win. Just bizarrely, in the back of my mind, when I look ahead and think ahead to Wembley, with the 4 teams that are going into these semi-finals, the one team whose fans I could just envisage being at Wembley were Oldham, and now they're there, and they're there deservedly so. But before we get on to the nitty-gritty of the game, I want to make a point about the playoffs, and it's not just positive or just negative; it's mixed. I love this format. I think it's proven to be really, really good. I think I love the fact that there's a little bit extra reward for where you finish in the table. But because of the schedule this time round, that's been negated. You've got teams that have earned the better benefit and the preferential scenario not really getting it because they're stuck not playing a game for 2.5 weeks. And then the position from which it should be almost impossible to progress from, your Southend or your Halifax position. Because if you go back at recent ones, the ones that come to mind, Ebbsfleet went to Aldershot midweek, won on penalties after extra time. And then 3 days later, they had to go up and play away at Tranmere. It was going to be a non-starter. And they have to accept that, So I'm not blaming anybody, but clearly the design of this kind of playoff format and then the weird number of weeks it's being stretched over actually does suit the teams that have got to do the travelling, because they're getting much longer to be able to, to benefit. And of course, that's a point more probably towards tomorrow night's game, isn't it? Forest Green against Southend than this one, because Oldham played at home to Halifax. But yeah, didn't see the scoreline coming. I have to say, no excuses on the night for York. I'm neutral, but they can rightly turn around and say we got 96 points. It's disgraceful that we're not getting promoted, and therefore that's coming back to the argument of 3 up, which needs to come in. Another reason tonight why it needs to come in. What about you? What was your take?
Well, I don't want to make the night completely about York City and how poor they were and how much of an injustice it is that they're not in the Football League now. When they finished second, they finished 23 points above Oldham Athletic. But I think we have to address the fact that they've got 96 points. It's probably not as bad as Notts County if they hadn't have gone up, but it's not far off if we're actually being honest. They're about 8 or 9 points away from what Notts County got. And on a one-off occasion in the playoffs, they're playing against a side that they've taken 4 points off this season. They finished 23 points above them. The only advantage that it really felt that they'd got tonight was that home advantage overall. And it just does feel like it's such an injustice. I do feel like football, well, the EFL has kind of failed York City overall because I don't think they should have had to compete in this playoffs. However, they knew at the start of the season if York, if they finished second, they were 2 games away from the Football League still. And I don't say that they've blown it tonight because I think Oldham deserve an enormous amount of credit for that.
Huge credit, Mellon and players coming into form, coming back into the team and coming into form at the right time.
But I just feel that York have been a little naive going into this game overall. And I don't actually know what they could have done differently because York, the way they've played throughout the season has been so effective. Why would you want to change the way you've played? But I don't think they've particularly analysed Oldham and that victory against Halifax. I just think they thought, well, we finished 23 points above them. We know man-to-man, this is factually correct. Oldham fans will disagree, but we know man-to-man, we've got the better players, and that's why we finished second and they finished 5th in the division. However, I feel they have been a little bit naive and they've not actually realised what this Oldham side is currently capable of. They've got an enormous amount of momentum. I predicted Oldham would go and play the way that they would at York City. I didn't expect it to be as effective as what it was tonight compared to how it was against Halifax. But oh my God, that was so effective. And I think an enormous amount of credit has to go to Mickey Mellon and the 11 players on that pitch because I think as a support base for Oldham, they've got to have so much credit going to those players, in my opinion, overall. They put over 100% in, not just to the Halifax game, but the York City game away as well. And I just feel overall, it does feel like, as a fan base, I've never seen Oldham Athletic be as close to the fans as what they currently are at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. They're really riding the crest of a wave. It's all about timing, isn't it? Whereas... one or two of clubs, particularly your own, have ended up going into the playoffs without 3 or 4 really key players. Oldham got 1 or 2 back to get Man Mountain, as I call him, Manny Monty, back in the side is huge. And I think in the midfield there, Evans was superb, and really the physicality that York had in that midfield was no match for Oldham, was it, on the night? And then I guess what people are going to be talking about, the modern, I don't know, what is it, utopia, whatever it is, the modern, this
style,
play out from the back. And playing out from the back is one thing. Standing on the ball on the edge of your own area, asking to be pressed, I don't get. There was a warning shot. Alex Hunt previously robbed, not too many minutes before the key moment, the first goal. It ended up going out for a throw-in. But then just a few minutes later, he receives the ball, facing his own goal, does nothing other than a little bit of a turn and around, and he's there. He's primed to be unloaded, and he is unloaded. And in one foul swoop, Oldham go ahead. That gave them a vital edge, and they never looked back, although they couldn't have dreamt whatever was said at halftime of coming out and within 5, 6 minutes scoring 2 more goals. Yoga Nathan, good strike, worth a strike from there. You wouldn't be expecting to score down. I thought Harrison Mail might just have got to that one. He's a keeper who I've got a lot of time for, and he's had some very, very good days this year. Tonight,
tonight, I think that that save against what Fondop did, that was an exceptional world-class save, wasn't it?
That was a very, very good save. That I think was maybe just before it went 2-0, was between 1 and 2 goals, number 1 and 2, wasn't it? And then Pritchard, that was a bit of a bizarre goal. The third goal, good move down the right-hand side. And then an unusual cross. It was sort of clipped a little bit short, but fair play to Pritchard. He was in the right place. He stooped to do his header, and no chance really for Mail with that one. And they went on to see it out quite comfortably, really, didn't they? I think York huffed and puffed, but you kind of knew 65, 70 minutes in, they weren't, in the way that game was, they weren't going to score 3 goals. They didn't get one in the end.
100%. And I do want to speak about that first goal, because I actually thought before the first goal happened, I actually felt that it was a very balanced game. I was actually quite applauded. I was quite positive about York City in the way they started. I thought they'd done well to cope with Oldham for the first 20 minutes or so. When I say that, of course, they're the home side, but it felt like they were quite intelligent in the terms of, right, we're going to tip Sting out of the game for the first 20 minutes. We know what they did to Halifax. They're going to be coming full guns blazing. Let's just have a steady start to the game, and then we'll grow into the game over time. And I thought they did that very, very well. But I think it is stupidity of what Hunt did. Not just Hunt, but Harrison Mayle as well. You know, he's probably been the National League Keeper of the Year, in my opinion. But the stupidity to roll it out like that to Hunt, and then Hunt was so unaware of his surroundings. Well, they've just gifted Oldham a goal there. They gifted him the first goal. And you mentioned earlier about it was about them having warning signs earlier. They were a very similar opportunity where I think they ended up hoofing it out to a throw-in where that could have led to a goal as well. And I just feel like, yes, York are a very good footballing side. We know that's the way they play. But there's a difference between passing out from the back and just gifting the opposition a goal like that. It was just so unnecessary. You know, to roll it out, put the player under pressure. I don't know how they'd have benefited from that, even if Oldham didn't actually win the ball back. I don't know where the benefit would be, because Oldham were already high up the pitch, so I didn't just hoof it forward instead of rolling it out to a player when the rest of your team's higher up the field. And when that happened, it just played right into Oldham's hands. They could then sit back and catch York on the break. And I just feel York were very neat and tidy, particularly in that first half, but they didn't do anything with the ball overall, particularly after that second goal. They didn't create anything. There were never a time, if I was an Oldham fan, where I'd be thinking, yep, York are on top here. The fans are behind them. They're going to go on and get an equaliser. No,
not at all. Not at all. One player I want to mention, and I normally wax lyrical over him. He's been superb, and he'd be in my National League team of the season. And also, as the NL full-time team, we've been asked to do an article in the match programme for the playoff final because it's been 10 years of Vanarama sponsorship, and our podcast has been going a similar time. We've had to pick our team of the decade, and I've put Callum Howe in both. Now, he's been outstanding all season. He was outstanding in the 2 games against my club as well. But I've watched it back, and I think he could have done better for the second goal. First of all, he doesn't judge the bounce and the header right, and doesn't take the opportunity. They generally say, get to the pitch of the ball, get something on it first time if you can. He didn't, which allowed Yanganathan to get going and then chasing the ball down the right-hand side, where he was beaten too easily for pace for me, and easily just eased off of the ball as well. So I think Callum Howe, who's a quality player, will look back at that and think he could have done better. Ironically, like you, early on in the first maybe 10, 12 minutes of the game, I was thinking, I just don't know how this is going to go. It is really, really tight. And York City had a corner, and Oldham didn't pick up Callum Howe. And I was like, wow, are you serious? That guy will hurt you. He didn't on that occasion. And I think they got their marking together from that point on. Huge credit to Oldham. Everybody was on the pitch for them. Huge credit to Mickey Mellon, who's played these playoffs very, very coolly. And huge credit to the Oldham fans as well. The noise that they made, the support of their team was fantastic. They had another good night, and who wouldn't be excited and noisy? But Oldham fans, for the final, please, can you get 1 or 2 other songs? Because we're on our way to the Football League. Right? After a while, it gets a little bit tedious. But I tell you what, they'll probably say, we don't care. We will sing it for 98 minutes at Wembley if we need to.
To be fair, they had some quite comical chants tonight that were here, and even I were like chuckling a little bit at some of them. Particularly, they weren't offensive towards Stones, but they were one about Stones anyway. And that were quite funny. It were linked to the, I don't know if you know it, but England fans and the Scotland. There's a chant about the old Scotland manager anyway. So those who know will be aware of what that chant would be.
You know.
If you know, you know. But no, we've got some great numbers tonight, considering it's quite late on and it's straight after the final. We've got over 70 people currently watching. So we're going to come to the live chat and we're going to hear your thoughts now. So Big Bad Bob, he'll be buzzing tonight after his Oldham side got the victory. Oh my God, I think I'm still in shock a bit. We've also had Keith, who's come in tonight and said, what a brilliant team. Bye-bye Stones. Wembley will be full with Oldham fans. And And then someone's also said, I believe, on when the Blues go marching in. We've also had the Blue Rooms who's coming tonight, and he said Oldham versus Southend is the final everyone should want. The two biggest fan bases in the league would be a great atmosphere. I think particularly because we know Southend, they're not that far away from Wembley as well. We know they'd be able to bring a large amount of fans, and for a neutral, that would be an excellent final. And then also we've had Wilco who's coming tonight and said, you come into Wembley, Luke, if you can get a ticket. I've already got myself there. I'm delighted to say, and it's massive thanks to you guys as well, because when the media team have actually took me seriously, probably because of you guys who actually watch me. I've got press access for Wembley, so I'm actually buzzing for that. Thank you very much to everyone that tunes in. And then we've also said Oldham battered York, and Oldham fans also been in tonight. Told you last night you was talking bull. Well,
SH1T.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I actually said, 3-2 to York, and I said it depends how well York cope with Oldham, and I thought they would be able to cope better. I thought they weren't going to be as naive as what they were against Oldham, but I suppose Oldham have just done exactly what I thought they'd do, but I didn't expect them to do it so well, and I thought York might have been able to cope better than what they did. So I suppose I feel like I'm being very harsh because of York overall this season, how excellent they've been, and particularly towards the manager. But I just feel do you think he was a little naive tonight? That's what I'm thinking potentially, with the fact that
that's fair.
he underestimated Oldham.
I think that's fair. I think you've summed it up pretty well in saying that, look, they know that man for man, they've got a good quality side. They secured more points throughout the season. They are at home. They generally play the way that they play, but they just couldn't get their game going. And you have to say, credit to Mellon, both for how he set up tactically, and how he got those players motivated and believing in their game plan, which was the superior game plan on the night. As you know, Luke, when you invited me to come on tonight, I said, oh, really? You want to do it straight after? And one of the things that we need to do is level out a little bit, because you're going to find here that the Oldham fans are incredibly high right now. And I don't know if you've had any comments from York fans, but they'll probably be wanting to hit out at something or someone. Mm-hmm. It's a horrible, horrible feeling. You tasted it a week ago, didn't you? And, so it can be quite emotive talking about a game just after it. As neutrals tonight, we're probably better placed to have a more objective conversation about it. Full credit to Oldham. Disappointing night for York. We won't harp on about the 96 points and they should have been promoted anyway, because, as you say, before a ball was kicked, they knew what the scenario was, as Dean Brennan did, by the way. Missed 102 points. He targeted 100. He got 102, and they got it done. What I would say, though, to throw in is, from a standing start for next year, we don't know how squads are going to rebuild, who's going to have a budget increase, a budget decrease, but it would seem likely that the bookies will probably now have York in a position to maybe make it a procession next season. Hopefully it won't be. Hopefully we'll have a good promotion and a good title race, but there's potential for it, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there certainly is. And I think now it does feel like we've seen it a lot of the times. Barnet last year, Chesterfield the year before, when they've lost out in the playoffs. And I suppose you might say they were favourites, maybe not Chesterfield, but Barnet particularly were the favourites in the playoffs last year. The following year, they've just absolutely smashed the league. And York have given it a good go this year, but it does feel like it has that potential, and it's still quite far off that York are going to go on and storm the league. But I suppose as well for Pearce as well. I know York have got a lot of financial backing, but I'd be a little concerned that they may lose him in the summer now, because he's not getting any younger, and I don't believe he's ever played in the Football League. And I just feel like, will he not want to give it a go in the Football League next season when clubs will be?
About Ollie Pearce?
Yeah, Pearce.
I don't see it. He has a special relationship with Hinchelwood, who believes in him, allows him to play the way that he plays. He'll be on a very lucrative and enjoyable contract. He's 29, 30 years old. It could tempt a team to come in, but I don't think York need to sell. And I think they'll want to keep things there. And I think he'll, bearing in mind, he'll have moved up from the South Coast as well. I don't know what his family situation is, but I understand that there might be interest. I think they need to cough up some considerable money, and even then, I don't know if Ollie Pearce would be interested in that. But I appreciate the debate. I appreciate that you might have a slightly different perspective on it. Yeah, that what we must say as well, and York City fans won't be feeling or wanting any consolation right now. I get that, but let's doff our cap to the job that they've done. Yeah, very, very well backed. But that improvement from 20th place to second, and the improvement in the points total that they've got from last season to this, is one of the biggest improvements season on season that any club's seen at this level. So they'll be hurting right now, and that won't provide much consolation, but we can see it. We can see it. We can respect it. And terrific job done this season by Hinchinwood, but coming up a game shy. He, as much as anybody, will need to learn from tonight.
I think as well, on the Oldham side of things, you look at the Halifax game, you could say everyone were going on about Halifax being so poor and York are going to give them a totally different type of game. And I do think they still did. I think York were clearly a tougher test. 3-0. I'm not going to say it's not deserved, because I do actually think they deserve to win, probably by that margin. But the first goal was a huge mistake. It shouldn't have happened. Yes, Oldham have taken the opportunity. It was a good strike still, but it was a huge mistake that shouldn't have happened. And then the following two goals, they just caught them off guard. They hit them quickly in the second half. Did exactly that second half, exactly what they did to Halifax in the following week. And I just feel that Oldham deserve an enormous amount of credit for tonight. I don't want people going around saying York were just so poor or Halifax were so poor as well. Halifax probably were, yes, but I thought Oldham played well that night. And tonight they certainly did once again. The reason York didn't play well, in my opinion, is because of the way Oldham actually played. They bullied them off the ball. This industrial style that in the regular season might not have been as effective as what your Oldham fans would have liked is perfect for the playoffs. And we spoke before a ball was kicked in the playoffs about Mickey Mellon and the criticism that he's got this season. But a lot of people were going around saying that, yes, but his style of football will be built for the playoffs. He knows how to get a side out of the National League. He's got the players that are built for the playoffs. They're athletes. They're big physical lads. And they bullied Halifax. And I'll be honest, they bullied York tonight, particularly in the midfield.
They did bully them, and I'm not going to give the name away, but I've been messaging with a National League manager this evening who said it's exactly what I thought, that the experience, the physicality, and the forward runs of Oldham would kill York, and they did. So, I mean, that's a National League manager who's paid to do the homework on other teams. Do you know what I mean? So it would be more technically and tactically aware than I am. I just thought this is going to be a hell of a spectacle between two massive teams and clubs with great support bases. There's a tiny little bit of me as a neutral that feels from 5 minutes into the second half we didn't really have a contest, did we? It was done. Yeah. But I won't be feeling as bad as you were feeling after 12 minutes last week when you knew it was done. But I agree. People would draw comparisons between the two. And I think the only thing that is worthy of mention is that Oldham were bang up for it and bang on it both weeks.
It does. I know the games are different in terms of how they won the games in extra times. Grimsby weren't winning games like Oldham have, but it does have a similar type of feel to it. Grimsby, how they kind of, in the regular season, no one was particularly saying positive things about Grimsby overall, saying it's been quite an average season. And I think in the regular season for Oldham, I think they'd have taken 5th place, but I don't think any Oldham fans were particularly over the moon with that regular season. However, it feels like they found the perfect system at the perfect time for the playoffs. The players have come back who they've needed for the playoffs. We've spoke about when they lost Clucas, when they lost Stones, and when Manny Monf was out injured as well before Christmas, and how they didn't replace those players. We have to remember, for the first quarter of the season, Oldham win the title race with Forest Green, Barnet and York. Then those players left. They had a few injuries, and they fell apart in that second half of the season. But in that final quarter or so of the season, it did feel like they'd got a bit of momentum. They had players coming back, and it just felt like they were getting stronger and stronger. And now they're at a point where I would go as far to say they're as strong as what they were in that first quarter of the season or so. Tom Pett in the midfield, he's not injured now. He's back. He's been excellent. He was excellent tonight. Fondop's coming to form at the perfect time. Stones was probably the main man. I think when they lost Stones, that looked like it were quite a big loss. Fondop stepped up in that time. And he kind of carried Oldham in that second half of the season. And now it does feel like he's been excellent. I don't think I've seen a striker this season give Howe a game like what Fondop did tonight. I think Howe will be having nightmares because of Michael Fondop this evening as well. And there's a number of players, Jogan Nathan as well, coming along from Barnsley. That's been an excellent loan he brought in. He stands out for me. That's going to be a player that's going to at least play in the Championship in the future. He's an excellent player, and you can go through the whole Oldham team, and they're just big physical athletes, and in the playoffs, it's perfect. And they've certainly done a job on York tonight. We've also had Wilco who's come in, and he said it's been an issue for a long time. It's another injustice for York, and perhaps they will implement it soon so this doesn't happen again. I have to say, for me as a neutral, the only benefit to tonight's result, potentially in terms of the injustice, is the fact that it might put more pressure on the EFL now to add that extra promotion place, because I know now, I don't think there'll be many York fans tuning in at the moment because they'll be getting over that game, but those York fans who are watching this the following day or even maybe a week later, those York fans currently now will be on Twitter not talking about the game. I don't think they'll be talking about the fact that it's an injustice that we're not in the Football League now. We've got 96 points and we're not in the Football League. We've also had Jim, who's come in tonight, and he said, hey, Luke, what was the stat you mentioned in the last stream about teams finishing fourth, having a better record in playoffs than those finishing second? Yeah, that was a stat last night. If you finished third in the play, one fourth. If you finished third in the playoffs, they've got promoted more times than what second have. Second, I think 4 out of the 7 times they've been in the playoffs, they've gone on to make the final. The other 3 times they've lost. That stat tonight now means that only half of the sides that finished second since the new format was implemented actually make it to the playoff final. And that totally suggests the reason, that the fact that there's so much pressure on the home side. And I think there was tonight. I don't know what your thoughts were, Paul. Not Paul, Rob.
You used to it being Paul. It could have been worse. You could have called me Sam, or you could have called me anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you've got to take being at home and use it as an advantage. Pressure is something you've got to thrive on at the business end of any football season, whether you're playing home or away. I know you've previewed tomorrow's game already, but myself thinking ahead to it, Forest Green are at home and they've only lost there once at home all season, so that's on their side. But I don't really see that they get much of an advantage for finishing third over Southend, who finished 7th, because Southend have kept some rhythm. They've got some momentum. They've they've had a wonderful away win, scoring plenty of goals, and they will have had by tomorrow 6 days to recover from it. So there's no disadvantage on them other than having to travel. And I guess, having a reduced amount of fans, Southend obviously could have taken more fans than they will take tomorrow. But I think I heard or read or saw that Roots Hall will be open and they'll have the game on there and they'll get a bit of an atmosphere going at Roots Hall. And if they win, I would imagine the party will still be going by the time the team get back from Forest Green as well. But look at the ingredients going into that one. What we saw tonight was the more experienced manager prevailed. The manager with the greater experience as well of the playoffs, certainly at this level. In Forest Green's manager, they've got all of that and more, haven't they? And they've got the quality in the players. I think the riddle is, what have Forest Green been doing to ensure that they're sharp for tomorrow night? Because that question was asked of Adam Hinchelwood pre-match, and of Josh Stones. I think Stones replied something along the lines of, no, we had a game against each other to bounce back. A game against each other, really?
You're not going to want to get injured, are you? And there's
no, I get it.
Yeah.
I get that's the only way that you control having a competitive game where people are not going to try and injure your players because you're playing against yourself. But I don't think you can replicate it. You can't replicate it. You finish the season with a competitive game of sorts, depending on whether you were safe or you were still vying for a position. And then you don't play a competitive fixture for 2.5 weeks. It's a real problem. It's a real headache. And hopefully Steve Cotterill, in order for his team to do themselves justice tomorrow night in what should be their home advantage, we'll have to wait and see. I don't see too many people predicting Forest Green to win that game, but we have to acknowledge, with the experience of the manager and the quality of the players they've got, that they're more likely to give Southend a game than York or Halifax did Oldham.
Now, it's totally up to you if you want to do this, Rob, but I was going to go on to, and I should have asked you before we even started this. This is me being unprofessional now, but if I went through every single player on that pitch and asked you to rate them out of 10, would you be prepared to give a rating?
I don't want to go. I don't really want to go to that level of detail. I think there were too many sixes, 5s and 6s in the York team, and across the Oldham team, you've got an awful lot that pitched in with a solid 7 and a few 8s in there as well. I think I'd probably generalise those ratings rather than go through every player painstakingly. Also, just to be blatantly honest, whilst I had the whole game on, I had some personal distractions tonight throughout the game, so I perhaps didn't watch it as closely enough to do that. But I mean, if you want to have a stab at it, or pick your player of the best and worst player from each team.
We could do that actually. I think I don't think it'd work if I just stood here going Felix 7, Fondop 8, but no, I think in terms of actual ratings, just looking, I think the Oldham side, I'd actually go as far to say there were a lot of 8s, 9s, potentially maybe even a 10, but I think it was more them as a team than actually individuals tonight actually stepping up for them. I think as an 11, they all played excellent. I think obviously the attackers will stand out because they're the ones who scored the goals. But Nathan, he's a player that I've admired. I've never particularly took notice of him in the regular season, but against Halifax and tonight, I thought he's excellent in both games. Fondop, as always, was excellent. Garner getting that goal, I thought he was excellent, and he's so intelligent as well, the way we're dropping in and stopping York from playing. But I think in terms of the York side, there's probably only one player that I think can leave his head held high tonight, and that's probably Joe Felix. He's the type of player as well that I don't actually think would actually suit that game because of his height, when you think of the physicality. But it felt to me he was the only man in that midfield for York that were offering any physicality, if that makes sense, or any energy or any way of actually getting forward. Particularly once they've conceded, he was the only one trying to pick the side up. And I think the rest of the other 10 players, if I'm being honest, I think probably all got 3s, maybe a 4 at a push. Harrison Mayle, probably a mixed game. That mistake was, I know someone's commented on it and said they think it was actually entirely down to him, the mistake, rather than Hunt. I think majority has to go to him because he's the one who rolled the ball out. But you could probably say towards Hunt, maybe he shouldn't have tried that trick that he did, and he should have probably just passed it back for him to hoof it out. But no, I think Harrison,
they're both culpable. Yeah. It's debatable.
I'd say Mayle me though, but yeah,
it's debatable. I'd put it more on Hunt than Mayle, and you put it more on Mayle than Hunt. And at the end of the day, the for want of a better phrase, and excuse the pun, it's not about having a witch hunt now, is it? But no, it wasn't great. And I just think from the Oldham point of view, I think probably somewhere between Fondop and Yoganathan and Corey Evans, I think is probably where your man of the match. So I think they gave it to Evans, didn't they, on the DAZN? I saw him being presented or awarded with it, but we were just preparing to come on air here. But yeah, collectively, Oldham and individually strong tonight, and York below par. And some of that below par performance is to be credited to Oldham.
Thought Akinayemi might have been the only other player that I can think of for York in the first half. I say that, particularly before the first goal went in. I thought down that side, I know someone's actually mentioned it here with Ogle, that was the only area where I thought York looked slightly dangerous. But like I said, I think the game completely changed when Oldham got that first goal. I think York shot themselves in the foot literally there, because they didn't only go 1-0 down and give Oldham a lead, but it fitted perfectly into the way that Oldham wanted to play, and because they knew York would have to come at them then. And the way they just set up, it was just exceptional for Oldham. They were just no way through for York, and it did always feel like it was going to be an uphill battle for them to actually even get an equaliser. And then when the second went in, for me personally, it was game over, and I think everyone else will have agreed when the third went in, it was game over as well. But we've also had a few more people come in tonight. We've had Peter, who's come in and said, Oldham fan, obviously I'm happy tonight and look forward to Wembley as much as I love the playoffs format though, and I'm happy for the Latics. I feel for York fans too. Season long for better till now. Someone said, good job, Ollie Pearce. Was injured and didn't play. Yeah, I think the mind games didn't pay off for York tonight. And
worst bluff ever. That worst bluff ever. When he said it, Hinshelwood, he said it with a grin on his face, didn't he? I don't think any of us seriously believed that Ollie Pearce wasn't going to start that game tonight.
Someone's put, what a performance, Luke. You suspected we had a chance. Come on, Oldham. I did actually say York to win, but I thought it'd be a lot tougher game, close game than what it was tonight. But suppose the way Oldham played at Halifax, it did show signs to me that they are capable. And I think whoever's got them in the final, they're certainly going to be the favourites. I think if it is Forest Green or Southend, just based on the previous two games. We've also had him come in tonight. Clay has come in and said, Ugler deserves it. Geyser, I won't say that word. And then we've also had Oldham v Southend is the best final. And then we've had Freddie, who's come in tonight and said there were a few key things that led to our downfall tonight. One, the 2-week gap between the end of season and playoff games. 2 crooks missing, which meant we had to play Sinclair right back and not Fagan Walcott. I don't see Sinclair as a right back either. I think he's more of a winger. So that was something that kind of shocked me in a way. I know people go on about the 2-week gap, but there's pros and cons to it for me personally. I think if York could have won tonight, then Oldham would be saying, well, it's not fair because we've only had 6 days to recover from the Halifax game. Whereas now Oldham fans can probably go on and say, well, we had so much momentum from that first win and York are coming into this cold. But I feel like York prepared in the off-season the best way they did in terms of they had form going into the playoffs. I just genuinely put it down probably to that starting 11, and I don't think they respected Oldham enough. And you may say, well, they shouldn't have because they finished second, but I don't think they've actually analysed that Halifax match at all, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I tend to lean more towards the 2.5 week gap. It's not right for me. It's too long, but you can't use it as an excuse. And I remember seeing Adam Hinshelwood's interview before the game, and he made it evidently clear then that they wouldn't be using it as an excuse either. And he said, I think we've used it to our advantage, to have a good rest and all the rest of it. But Jay's not too happy.
Well, we've got a York fan in tonight. He said it's not an injustice. We are just bottle jobs. I think that's probably a clear point of potentially maybe being raw, but I don't know, because it is an injustice. But then again, you could say York bottled it. But I purely put it down to the fact I just don't think I think they've been so naive going into this game, and I don't think they've respected Oldham in any way. I don't think they've taken any notice of what Oldham have done, the form they've been on. They've just gone into it saying, listen, we finished second, we've got the better players. If we play to the best of our abilities, we'll win. And if they did, to be fair, and Oldham didn't manage the game like they did, then York would have won because they're the better team. But the thing is, we can say that York didn't turn up. I put it down to the fact that I just think Oldham stopped York from actually playing. And I suppose maybe you put it down to the lineup in a way. I think the likes of Sinclair probably... I thought Felix played well, but I don't think it was his sort of game overall. Hunt, these technical players that have got so much ability beyond the National League, but they're just not big physical individuals, are they?
No,
yeah.
If you give them space and time, they can and they will hurt you. But Oldham didn't give them any space and they didn't give them any time. And like you said, in certain parts of the pitch, they almost bullied them. I mean, there was one staggering moment in the first half where Manny Monti was all over. I can't think who the York player was at the time, but it was staggering. Just before half time, staggering that a free kick wasn't given. I know Hinchelwood was complaining to the fourth official about it, but yeah, Oldham made York look poor, too physical for them. That's what Daniel reckons, and yeah, I completely concur. I think that's where you look for this one team, buoyant, full of belief, full of energy, full of physicality, full of experience, full of nous. Joe Garner, yeah, his return to the side and return to form has played a big part. And a lot of things in life, when you look for the answers, they're in the timing. And when you were looking for something to clutch hold of when Halifax went out rather weakly and limply a week or so ago, it was because of timing, because they come up in the worst shape that they were in against the wrong team at the wrong time, and that's why the game was separated by 4 goals. Freddie says about the terrible bluff was more to shift the focus away from the fact that we didn't have Crooks at the back, but obviously didn't matter. Well, I guess that's how you look at that one. But I agree. I thought it was a terrible bluff, and I don't know anybody that I spoke to up to the game who believed it.
I think, yeah, even me and Sam were obviously previewing the games. Was it last night? Yeah, well, last night. I'm forgetting my bearings now. And I think I actually said to Sam, who do you reckon is going to replace Pearce? And he just came out and said, I don't think Pearce is actually injured. I think he'll start in the starting 11. And I think Oldham worked that out as well. Within the fan base on social media, it did feel like all Oldham fans were thinking that Pearce were going to go on to start. And I just don't think York have adapted the way they played, how they should have done for this game. But it's all in hindsight. If York had have adapted the style and maybe, I don't like to say lower the standards to likes of Oldham in the terms of it going more of an industrial and direct style, and it's that hadn't worked, then everyone would be going online, including me and you now, will be saying, why have they changed it? Why they've changed the style? We know that throughout the season, all of York's losses have been when they've changed it up, when it's been unnecessary. And, if they'd have gone on to lose tonight because they'd have changed it up, potentially started more physical players that aren't technically as good in that York side, we all know that York had lost. Everyone had been saying, well, why have we changed it? It is all in hindsight. And I suppose that is with football. As a manager, I suppose when you're managing someone like York, the disadvantage is because you've got so many options. If you don't pick the perfect team, if you don't win, let's say, then you're going to get a lot of criticism, aren't you, because of the amount of options that you've got.
And here, I believe it's the first time we've mentioned it tonight, and I know we must be close to finishing now anyway. Yeah. But we debated this so much when it happened, and it hasn't been mentioned so far tonight. But I'm just going to mention it again. And it's really ironic because it was against the team that he came from. He was on loan at Oldham, but Josh Stones, in the end, Hinchelwood's picked a team with Josh Stones on the bench. And that was likely because he's done it an awful lot. But I just can't get my head around the fact that I know my team doesn't have that kind of level of financial clout. So we'd never be in a position to have top quality players just sitting on the bench in case they were needed. But is that something that when Adam Hinchelwood looks and thinks, what could he have done better? Could he not, over not too far short of half a season that he had Josh Stones, come up with a way of playing so that he could have the combined qualities of Josh Stones and Ollie Pearce in the same team? Mm-hmm. I know they're different types of players, and I know he probably wanted somebody with more energy, like Akinyemi there, and they've got a certain way of playing, as you say. But maybe you've got to show an ability to adapt and try something a little bit different. I just can't get my head around how much York have paid for a player of that quality that he can't get in their starting lineup when it matters in a playoff semi-final. Still, he was on the bench, and he got on after an hour. But I tell you what, the game was over by the time he came on.
I think I actually put a point when Stones had just signed for York. I actually said that money is unjust. You can't justify that amount of paying that amount of money in this division if you're not starting him every week. And I didn't expect them to. I said that if you're going to play Pearce and Stones up top, why would you do that? You're just disrupting the style, which I agreed with in the regular season. But if you're going to drop Pearce for Stones, then there's going to be an upset there in terms of Pearce being dropped when he's the top goal scorer. And I think that point, in a way, has kind of been proven because he's had no impact tonight. They've spent an awful amount of money for him. And he's going into next season now knowing that he's the backup to Pearce unless Pearce moves on. So for me, overall, I just don't think that signing's worked out at all. And I still go by the points. I think they did that tactically to try and weaken Oldham. And I suppose tonight Oldham have kind of had the last laugh. We've also had tonight come in, we've had Andrew who said, absolutely buzzing. OAFC, last time I went to Wembley, I was 14. I'm now 48. These are the stories that I suppose we do like to hear. Aaron's come on as well, an Oldham fan, and said, last night you said, and I quote, man for man, I'd pick every single York player over Oldham in every position. And I stand by that. I still stand. In a regular season, they've finished 23 points above York. They've got, just because of one-off game, they've got the better players compared to York. But when the two sides come together, you've got one that's really physical and one that's full of technical players. And I suppose the team that's come on top is the more physical players in this one-off occasion, I say that. But if you're playing 46 games now, and let's say Oldham don't get promoted and they don't lose any players in the summer and they don't bring any in, and it's the same with York, and we're starting the season once again, I would pick York's squad over Oldham's squad because they've got the better individuals. And I do stand by that overall. But like I said tonight, I think Mickey Mellons deserves an enormous amount of credit because he's tactically got it spot on. And I look back at that game at Boundary Park when York actually went to Oldham and won 2-0 there. And I remember thinking that night, is this really a good advert for the National League in terms of Oldham particularly? They were so poor that evening. I thought York was so far superior compared to them. But what I will say tonight is they've adapted the way that they play now perfectly for that game. And a massive and enormous amount of credit has to go to Mickey Mellon and that Oldham squad tonight because they ran the socks off for 90 minutes. Becky's come in. I believe this might be a York fan. It was down to who turned up tonight, and Oldham were the ones that did show up. Well done to Oldham. Good luck for promotion. York just need to smash next season, onwards and upwards. So I suppose remaining optimistic, and to be fair, York will be the favourites next season, and I think everyone will be backing them to go on to win the league. Just before we finish up then, Rob, as I've got you on tonight, I know we've probably gone on longer than we expected, but Forest Green versus Southend tomorrow, I've already given my prediction. How do you see that one going? And do you think both of those sides will be looking at tonight and reflecting on that, particularly Forest Green being the home side?
Yeah, it's another very tight one. I think Southend's momentum, the collective feeling, the whole feeling of the free hit in the playoffs, that whole kind of Grimsby-esque feeling about the playoffs, I think might just outweigh Forest Green's obvious quality, the nous of their manager, and the fact that they've been dormant for two and a half weeks as well. I don't know how that will look, whether that will be winning the odd goal in 5 or whether it will be a lot tighter than that. Of course, if it goes to extra time and penalties, it could still be anyone's game. One of the things we always look at when we look at every team, the 2 times that I've seen the teams up close and personal, I've seen Southend take 4 points off of Aldershot this season, and Forest Green drew both times with Aldershot. So based on what I've seen, I would also go with Southend for that reason. But that might be a moot point because those games are throughout the season. It all comes down to how they are right now. And of course, if you'd asked me to factor that in when Oldham come to play York, then I'd have said, well, hang on a minute. Not just a few weeks ago, York spanked Aldershot 7, and Aldershot went to Boundary Park and won 3-1. Admittedly, a little bit fortuitously after taking an absolute pounding for 40 minutes and being 1-0 down. They turned it round and scored 3 quick goals. But yeah, so that, but it we're only human beings. So we go back to our memory. What did we see when we saw them in the flesh? How would that look from a Halifax point of view? What points did Halifax take off of Southend and Forest Green this year?
Forest Green, we took 4 points off them, and Southend did the double over us.
So if you factored that in, you'd also pick Southend. And what do you think about tomorrow night? How do you see it going?
Well, I've given my prediction, but it does kind of change after tonight, and it's a totally different type of game because Southend, they've got the momentum like Oldham, but then again, on the flip side, Forest Green have got the experienced manager compared to Southend. I know Kevin May has been in this division for a number of years, but he's got nowhere near the same experience as Steve Cottrell in the playoffs. And I just feel two totally different sort of teams. You'd expect Southend to keep a lot of the ball, although the away side compared to Forest Green tomorrow night. But I did back Southend to win, but I actually found that harder to predict than this game. I thought York would actually do it tonight, but I did find both quite hard to predict, but particularly the second game. We've had Wilco's come and said, are we the first team to beat second place from fifth? No, actually, last year, Solihull Moors beat Barnet, but Solihull Moors then lost in the final. But those who do finish second have got a poor record in these playoffs overall, considering that they finished second. Third place is the most successful, and that is Forest Green tonight. So we'll see if they can be successful in these playoffs once again. Anything you'd like to finally wrap up? Oh, no, we've got one more question, and then we will kind of wrap things up because I know we're going on now. But do you think Oldham could potentially hold on to Yoganathan for another year, or will he be set for a place in that Barnsley 11 next season? For me personally, I think if Barnsley are watching him at the moment, they'll be looking to integrate him into the squad. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I would imagine what they would do is they'll have a look at him again in pre-season, and they make their decisions. What might work for Oldham if they do get promoted, having had a good loan spell at a National League club, Barnsley may look to put Yoganathan out at a League Two club next year. So if Oldham can actually progress in the playoff final, then they may well have a chance of getting him back next season.
Oldham v Southend surely will be the one-off record attendance in the final. He's actually put the blame down to Harrison Mail, and I think the majority of people are. I know it's totally different because I'm 18 and I've never played football at a high level, but I used to play in probably that midfield position when I played. And if my goalkeeper rolled it out to me, of course, it's a totally different level. But in that situation there, and I'd have lost the ball, I think I would be like, it's the goalkeeper. What are you doing there? Why are you giving me the ball when I'm back to goal as well? Like in that situation, that's my thinking behind it. But then again, if I was in that position, I wouldn't have the confidence to then try to do a trick, knowing that if I lost the ball, then we're conceding. And I'd probably just passed it back to the goalkeeper for him to hoof out. So I think both need to take a certain amount of blame, but I think the majority has to go to Harrison Mail. Anything finally to add, Rob, before we kind of wrap things up tonight?
No, just that I hope tomorrow night is a really good contest. Hopefully it goes close to the wire. I mean, we've been so spoilt with some of the playoff games we've had again this year. Bournemouth against Dorking, the 4-3, and Rochdale Southend, the 4-3, which I don't know if this has occurred to you or any of our viewers, but was incredibly similar. One side 3-1 up, the other one came back to win 4-3. Bournemouth did it a little bit later in the game than Southend did, but might we just get another one of those? I hope so. I hope it won't be good for the heart rate of the supporters of both sides, but I hope that maybe we get a 3 or a 5 goal thriller. I look forward to that final. Myself and Joe Pope will be there for NL full time, so we'll see you there on the day in the media area. Sadly, it won't be our teams that are there, but to be fair, you've had the experience of seeing Halifax win at Wembley in the last couple of years, and I've had the experience now of seeing Aldershot do the same. So we'll look forward to that, and whoever's there. And just remember, a lot of people romanticising in their head here about the perfect final being Southend against Oldham. Just remember, if you are Forest Green, you live with that kind of, they own who they are, Forest Green. They're a very different football club to a lot of others, and they're not a big club. They don't have a huge fan base. but they use that where they can to their advantage.
I think as well, just cutting in, sorry there, and someone has to, we had a few Forest Green fans who came on last night, and I totally understand where they're coming from. They're not getting the credit that they deserve this season. It's their first season back in the National League. When have we ever seen a side, apart from, well, no, I don't think you can compare the two, but a side come back into the National League and have such a successful season, finishing third in the division. And even if they don't go up, I think it's been an excellent season. And we talk about York tonight, not going through, and next season they're going to be the side that are going to go on to win the league. But I think Forest Green Rovers, second year in this division, they'll be looking to hunt York City down, and they'll be hoping to win the league if they don't get promoted this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't see reason why they can't. I think Steve Cotterill knew exactly what he needed and wanted to compete, and they've competed really, really well. I think their quality of their squad stands up against any of the sides in the National League. It probably doesn't have the same depth as some of the others, but you've probably got 18, 19, 20 players at Forest Green who could all come into that starting 11 and not weaken it. That should also mean that they have good options on the bench tomorrow night. And as I've seen throughout the season, particularly watching Aldershot games, the strength of the bench and the players coming on to finish the game can sometimes be almost as important as the 11s that start.
Well, that kind of wraps up tonight's podcast. It's been excellent numbers. I didn't really think how this would go. I thought it'd either do very well or it'd do very poor because it's so late and straight after the game. But we've had over 100 people listening in tonight. Rob, as you've come on tonight so late, I think it's fair that I give you the opportunity to give your podcast a plug.
Oh, yeah. NL Full-Time covers the 3 national leagues, usually a weekly pod. One came out a little bit late this week, came out this morning, talking about all the playoffs, but also quite a bit of audio from the NGAs, the National Game Awards at Plough Lane, Wimbledon last week, the non-league paper-sponsored National Game Awards. We had a chat with Kyrell Lisby. We had a chat with Danny Elliott, who's going to be a presence in the National League North with Macclesfield next season. And we had a chat with non-leagues Anton Deck themselves, Aaron McLean and Kirtley.
Brilliant. Well, Rob, I do really appreciate you coming on tonight. And thanks to everyone that's tuned in once again. Please remember to like and subscribe. Congratulations to Oldham on making the final. I'm sure you're over the moon at the moment making that final. And commiserations to York City as well. I think both set of supporters, I've probably had my differences at some points this season. I think some Oldham fans at the moment have an issue with me for some reason. Think I've got an agenda with them for some reason, but I don't. But York, certainly, I think at times it's been the same story. But no, commiserations to you. I understand how it feels. But what I will say about York City is next season, at least that you know they're going to be up there compared to probably Halifax, who knows what's going to happen to that squad next season. So, yeah, congratulations to Oldham, commiserations to York City. Check out our sponsors, cards, etc. There's a link in the description to do that. You get 50% off your card machine, no contracts or monthly fees. Rob, once again, thanks for joining me. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.